So after the introduction, let us now move into the main part of our lesson. What were the causes of the two world wars, the consequences, and the birth of UN, and so on?
The world at the beginning of the century was divided into two. The developed industrialized countries of the West, which included Britain, USA, Germany, France, Italy, Japan, etc., and the colonial countries which included Asia and Africa. The industrially developed countries were in conflict with each other, while the colonial countries struggled for independence. The industrial nations were in turn divided into rival blocs where Germany, Austria and Hungary were on one side and Britain, France and Russia were on the other side. These countries competed for domination of the world so that they can gain control over the markets and the colonies.
Now let us look into the details of the World War I.
The First World War broke out in the year 1914. The term World War aptly suits it as the entire world took part in the war. The countries from Japan and China in the east to USA in the west were touched by the war. The First World War ended in 1918 after the defeat of Germany and its allies by Britain and France.
Students, another important aspect of the world during the war period is the division of the world. The world was divided into nation-states. In addition, the nations were grouped into power blocs, and the degeneration of the alliances resulted in war camps. You must be remembering the concepts of nationalism and the nation-states movements in the 19th century that you have studied last year. Students, the formation of nations also increased the struggle among the industrialized nations for control over the world. In addition, they struggled for greater say in world diplomacy and armies to support national interests. It is at this point, that is, at the end of the 19th century, that the different nations of Europe entered into alliances with each other against the other blocs.
There were two blocs that emerged, which are the Center and the Entente or Allies. These blocs, in other words, were a result of the struggle for power and control over the territories.
These blocs created much insecurity. As a result, alliances were formed, which are mostly secret alliances. These alliances were mostly between the known enemies like Australia and Italy or Britain and France. Students, we can see that similar blocs continued into World War II.
The Axis powers, which had Germany as the leader, and the Allies, which is led by Britain, US and USSR.
Students, it is not an easy task to compare the two world wars. The two wars were different in their own respects. The Second World War took place 21 years after the first, which means there was a change in the economic conditions, hardware, and so on. But how do you think the Second World War was different from the other? Let us see the immediate effects of the wars and then the causes of the world wars to understand it better. As we all know, there are triggers that lead to wars. There may be short-term as well as long-term causes for a war, or it may be the immediate provocations that were a result of long-term issues.
When it comes to World War I, it was a case of immediate provocation where Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria was murdered on June 28, 1914 by a Serb. Austria immediately declared a war on Serbia. As Serbia was with the Allied powers like UK, France and Russia, these countries defended it when it was attacked by Austria. It is at this time that the Central Powers like Germany and Italy, which were allies to Austria, joined the war.
This was how the World War I began. Now let us see what the cause of the World War II was.
On September 1st, 1939, German tanks drove into Poland. Hitler, the ruler, invaded Poland as a punishment for denying giving the Danzig port to Germany. This served as an immediate provocation for the World War II. The territory of Polish is spread between two parts of Germany.
Hitler thought the occupying of Poland as a result would be a small military operation, but it didn't turn out to be. The Defense Pact of Poland with Britain led Britain to defend Poland. France also joined the defense. This was how the Second World War began. Now that we have seen the immediate provocations of both the world wars, let us see what the long-term causes of these wars were.
In the case of World War I, aggressive nationalism, imperialism, secret alliances, and militarism can be called the three main long-term factors that caused World War I.
In addition to the long-term causes of the World War I, new causes added up and resulted in the World War II. One of the main reasons is Germany's dissatisfaction of the results of World War I. Now let us learn in detail the long-term causes of the war. Students, the idea of nationalism is certainly a positive one. In fact, the nationalism served as the foundation for the modern-day nation-states. Nationalism served as a force behind the unification of Germany and Italy. Then how do you think it resulted in a world war? The other side of nationalism is that it could be used to create pride in people as well as create hatred for neighbors. The hatred slowly increases between the various states of Europe in the 19th century.
The Italian fascism 1923 and the National Socialism of the Nazis from Germany were some of the other forms of the aggressive nationalism.
These were more in the destructive mode. The fascists made use of aggressive nationalism through which they built images of Germany emerging and ruling the world. In addition, they also made Germans against the other nations of Europe. The next important reason of the World War to break out is imperialism.
Students, as we all know, industrial capital developed in the countries like Britain, Germany, and US. As a result, these countries needed markets for their produce and also they needed raw materials. As the capital got accumulated in banks and financial institutions, these countries thought of safe investment options in the colonies. As a result, by the end of 19th century, the European powers competed for colonies. The governments of the countries on behalf of the capitalists tried to increase the areas of their influence and reduce the areas of the competitors.
Secret alliances of one nation with the other are seen as another important reason for the outbreak of the war.
In 1870, the German Chancellor Bismarck, after defeating France, made a decision to isolate it. As a result, he made a secret alliance with Austria in 1979 and with Italy in 1882. The defensive alliance meant to partly save Austria from Russia and Italy from France. France broke the isolation by entering into a mutual alliance with Russia in 1891 and with Britain in 1904 after resolving a few issues. In 1907, the countries of Russia, France and Britain formed the Triple Entente. The Triple Alliance was headed by Germany and the Triple Entente resulted in creating feelings of jealousy and suspicion of each of the European powers.
These alliances led to the creation of fear and armed peace in Europe. Another important reason for the outbreak of war is militarism. Students, can you guess what the term militarism is?
It is the belief that military strength is the best way to ensure security and that war is a good way to solve issues. The military expenditure of the six big powers, which include Germany, Russia, Austria, Italy, France and Britain between 1880 and 1914 increased by more than 300%. In other words, from £132 to £397 million.
Students, from this image, we can see how the spending on military shot up gradually. Students, there are three important aspects that are to be kept in mind with regard to militarism.
Each of the countries invested in building huge standing armies and raced against each other to increase the armaments. In addition, they also created a mindset in the people to support wars.
Also, the world saw the emergence of huge industrial complex manufacturing arms that promoted the idea that war is a solution to diplomatic issues between countries. In addition, the wars also increased the profits by many times. So these are the important factors that resulted in the outbreak of World War I.